Welcome to Wellspring on the Air. I'm Lindsey Steffen, a therapist at Wellspring and the host of today's show about kids and sexuality. So, the title of today's show is officially How to Know More Than Your Kids About Sexuality. So, we have Yasamin with us here today. She's one of our awesome therapists. She heads up a lot of our bounce programming, our trauma camp for teens. So, thank you for being here today, Yasamin.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourself clinically, and then we'll dive in.
Sure. Yes, so I am a licensed mental health counselor at Wellspring. My population I usually see is children, teens, young adults, and I do have experience in trauma. So, like you said, heading up the bounce program has been a joy at Wellspring to work through.
She's one of those who kind of does it all. You'll see her name on a lot of things. So I love it though. She's multifaceted, multi-talented. So she works a lot with teens. We consult together a lot on our teen parent work. So I'm really glad she's here kind of as an expert on kids and teens to talk about this important topic. So let's get started. Again, we're going to talk about how to know more than your kids about sexuality. So I have a beginning question for you. So I think sometimes we don't even know those milestones. Like, where should kids be, or kind of not should, but just what is natural? What are we expecting from our kids and their thoughts and behavior? So kind of at what age do kids actually start to identify with their sexuality?
hmm And I think that's funny because a lot of parents don't even realize their kids as sexual beings until I don't even know what age, until they're out of the house or moved. But actually,
Yeah.
according to the National Center on the Sexual Behavior of Youth, sexuality actually begins at infancy. So kids as young as 3 years old can identify their gender and they start identifying other people's genders. Um, and then we see puberty starting around 7 to 12 years old. Um, and by that time, kids know, they learn in school even about, about sex, about sexuality, about
Yeah.
gender, and now, about other genders. We're gonna get more into that. Um,
Yeah.
but
So
really,
this
as young as 3 years old.
That's young. As you're talking, I'm like, wow, I'm sure a lot of our parents are listening and they are thinking, oh my gosh, like a
Yeah.
freak out moment. But that's why we want to talk about this, because it's important to know like what to really expect and then how to handle it, how to deal with it as a parent. Because we always say parenting, it doesn't come with a manual, unfortunately, like putting together a desk or a fridge. So I think we have to really stop and kind of figure out, okay, what are some things that would be helpful for me to know that we really don't just know naturally in life. It's not something, again, that you get a little book with, this should happen at this age and this age. So wow, so as young as 3 they start to notice, okay, you're a boy, I'm a girl, or things like that. Yeah.
hmm
Okay,
Yeah.
so I wonder, in this day and age, technology, social media, those are all big topics for us. So I just have to ask, where are kids actually getting their info?
From my sessions, it seems like they're getting their info from, social media and their peers. Actually, studies have shown that most American teenagers learn more about sex and sexuality from their peers and media than from their parents.
Which is
Um,
scary because peers
mhm.
and media, that is not maybe a reliable source.
No. So things such as Snapchat, TikTok is a big one now,
Oh yeah.
Instagram, TV shows, just seeing how characters interact on
Mhm.
TV shows, what they're doing, movies, even music, listening to music, and even learning messages about sexuality from the songs they listen to.
Yeah.
So it's everywhere. It's like encompassing, our entire lives. So,
Yeah, I
you know,
think the same with TikTok. I know that's like the big rage. I don't have TikTok. I'm too old, but I always tell my teens, okay, tell me what's going on TikTok. What do I need to know? Educate me. They love that. But
yeah.
yeah, I mean, they're telling me actually some pretty traumatic things sometimes that they've been exposed to, whether sexual in nature or I had one kid who actually witnessed a suicide on TikTok. There's really not
Oh,
a
that's
like a
terrible.
filter on what's coming through to these kids. So it's pretty scary. And, You think, okay, their 12-year-old peer is teaching them about sexuality and sex, or they're learning it on social media from who knows who, someone with very different, perhaps, um, moral codes or religious beliefs or what have you, than the
Mhm.
parents in the home. So if you're not talking to them, they're really only getting that outside perspective from the world.
Mhm. And what I love to see is that, kids are curious, like they want to know, they want to have these conversations, and they're going to find it. They're going to
Yeah,
find it, whether it comes to them inadvertently through an app, it pops up, or they're going to go search for it.
it's
Um,
true.
so if it's not being a purposeful conversation or something that parents are talking about, um, they're curious, and that's actually very healthy and normal to be curious about your sexuality, what's going on in your body, your attraction.
Yeah.
That's actually healthy, and that should be something that we talk about.
I love that you say it's healthy, because yeah, I think there's some, right, that the dads who, you're not going to date till you're 30, kind of that joke. And I know
Yeah.
it's cute, and it's like, I just love you, I don't want you to, leave or whatever. But I think some of that, we do want to be very open to the fact that it's normal. Like, yeah, you have attraction, you have feelings in your body, and just to know how to talk about it so they don't feel shamed, so they don't make mistakes, they know what to do responsibly with those feelings. It's unfortunate, but when I work with teens or even middle school, a bit younger, several of them have had friends tell them, hey, go home and Google this website, and it's porn or something. And it's a house maybe where we don't talk about that. It's kind of the taboo
Yep.
topic. We don't talk about sex. So then the child is kind of, wow, like this is, something that I didn't expect. And part of me is kind of feeling bad, but also wanting to explore
Mhm.
this. And so they
Yeah.
might even privately have kind of some, viewing going on, and they're never going to bring that up to their parents, because if we can't even say the word sex in the house, then this feels like way, way out of lines of what I can talk about.
Mhm. And even the fact that we talk about even in therapy, like the fact that they have pleasure, even in seeing something that's wrong, let's say like porn, the fact that their bodies are working, that like, they're feeling pleasure from something sexual, that makes biological sense.
Yeah.
It's just, is that experience helpful? Is that going to be good for them?
Yeah.
I know with you, we often go back in therapy when people are struggling with sexuality or a disorder of some sort. We go back to that first experience,
Yes.
um,
And
where
kind
they
of
first had that
heal from
encounter.
that. Yeah,
Hmm.
because it is, in a way, it's the feelings are not wrong. It's just wrong, or it's wrong timing. It's not the
Wrong
timing.
time.
You weren't supposed to have that experience at 7 or 10. That was like a early exposure to
Yeah.
sexuality and those feelings that yeah, it was just too much. Your little mind can't process it. It doesn't know what to do with it. But we do want to take away the shame of, you're right, the pleasure, because I tell my, all the way through adults, your body was just working normally. Even sometimes people who have been abused, they might feel weird or shamed that they had some moment of pleasure. I say, your body is working as God designed it to. And so there's nothing shameful there. It was just the wrong scenario or circumstance, something out of your control. So
Hmm.
we do, I hopefully, listening to this, it might be, oh, Wellspring's Christian, how are we talking about this? But we have to. I mean, God made us to be sexual beings, to enjoy that bond within marriage and the physical aspects of that, as well as the emotional. So we want to help you be more comfortable with talking about it, so then you can talk with your kids.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, how are parents speaking to their kids on this topic, as we kind of encourage them to talk more openly? But what's the reality, Yasmin?
I think parents are uncomfortable.
Mhm.
It's an awkward conversation. Maybe they're not even aware that their kids are having, feelings, just sexual feelings, even if they're young.
Mhm.
But it's encouraging. I've read that studies show that teens would like to be able to talk to their parents about sexual topics.
Wow.
So that's encouraging. Like kids want it, teens want it. Um, and I feel like parents have to start becoming really comfortable with talking about sexuality.
Yeah. You're right, because they they have the need and the desire to talk to their parents about the harder topics. And I've had many teens tell me, I wish I could talk to my mom about this or that. It might be something sexual, or even maybe just that they tried something, a substance, but they fear punishment. They fear being kind of shut down and, oh, just grounded with no discussion. So we really encourage, of course, you can punish, you can take away privileges. That's a normal boundary setting
Yeah.
practice in parenting, but have conversations. Don't just get mad and take away something. Talk to them. Why did you try that? When you saw that, how did that feel for you? How are you feeling now after that experience? Um, if our parents didn't talk to us that way growing up, though, we might not have the language. So at Wellspring, we're really big when we work with kids and teens to teach the parents. It starts from the top down. So we want them to feel equipped to know helpful language, nurturing language, more connecting language. We're very big on connected parenting, that type of
Mhm.
parenting style. So, but first, we have to be comfortable as adults to talk about these things. So if you notice, I'm really uncomfortable talking about sex, then maybe think, okay, well, what were the messages you got growing up about sex? Was it helpful? Was it not? Was there
Mhm.
shaming around sex? Or for some people growing up in church, it can actually be a bit of a taboo thing when, I mean, God celebrates sex. He made it, he created it. It's a good
Mhm.
thing. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It's a blanket statement like no sex before marriage, or, you know,
Yeah, a lot of
where the
times the
conversation
message.
ends. Yeah.
Yeah, don't have sex. Don't. And then one day they can. Some people struggle with that. They're like, "Oh, my whole life I've been not, don't do it, don't do it." And then one day it's like, "Oh, you're married." And they're like, "Oh, this still feels like maybe they're uncomfortable." Or we have clients who come for that because it was just like such a negative connotation around sex until one day, "Oh, you're allowed now." So,
Hmm. And it's a great point for parents to talk about their beliefs, their values in terms of sexuality with their kids. So there's a lot of great conversations, and just even like connection, like you said, between parents and their kids that can happen when conversation starts to open and parents really start talking to their kids
I love
about
that.
sexuality.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because at church they may or may not speak very explicitly in sermons on sex. Sometimes some churches do speak more openly, but yeah, you're going to need to really have the more nitty-gritty conversations with them. And again, teaching them what does the Bible say about sex? What context is sex for? Why is sex good? Not having such a
Mhm.
fear-based, just don't have sex. That doesn't
Yeah.
work. We know statistically that doesn't work. That fear runs out eventually. So helping them understand what's behind the decision to wait, whether it's a spiritual decision, also just knowing like healthy sexuality, how to protect yourself, understanding about, of course, things like pregnancy and STDs. Those are real life topics we need to discuss with our kids, and not just say, don't do it, because they're like, oh, I don't think that goes over well with teens. They like to have a reason. They're actually very logical sometimes, even though they get such a bad reputation for just being
Mhm.
overly emotional, which both can be true. But
Yeah.
um,
And in our culture now, sexuality, we're talking about sex, like being intimate with someone else, but there's also how you identify. A lot of people now, kids are going to see it, homosexual, lesbian, gay relationships, even in their school with their peers. So
yeah,
even talking about that and, having conversations about, how people identify themselves these days, even if it's not your belief or value at home, it's a conversation that needs to take place.
yeah. And we're going to take a break, Yasmin. So I'm going to pause you on
Yeah.
that topic because I think we could
Okay.
say a
We'll
lot
come back
on
to
it.
it.
Yeah, we'll come back to it. So stay with us though. Tune back in. We're going to just take a short break. I'm Lindsey Steffen with Wellspring on the Air. Welcome back to Wellspring on the Air. This is Lindsey Steffen. And if you're just joining today, we are talking about how to know more than your kids about sexuality. So again, I'm here with Yasamin, and she's one of our therapists. She's been a great asset today so far, already telling us about, where are kids getting their info, what is normal for kids with identifying with sexuality, how can parents speak to their children. So if you join late and you missed some of it, definitely go to your favorite podcast channel, Wellspring on the Air. You can also go to our blog page on our website, wellspringmiami.org, and just search for this topic. So Yasamin, let's keep going. We were just talking about
Let's roll.
Yeah, let's roll. What to do? What can parents do, around this topic of sexuality, and what can they do before they speak to their kids so they feel equipped?
Hmm. Yeah, parents have to do their own research. I had to do my own research as a therapist.
Absolutely.
Um, you know, you have to know what your kids are learning, and the society that we live in, the culture, they hear terms, they hear lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and they're learning about that through media, through apps, through songs. So it's important that parents get a really good understanding of what those terms mean, what it looks like, what kinds of relationships those are, so that they can be on the forefront with their kids and talking about it. Um, Despite what your beliefs are, what your values are about it, it's a reality. People are expressing those things. Your kids probably have people in their classes that are maybe gay, bisexual, transgender, queer. And, you have to be ahead of your kids with that. So doing your research first is incredibly important before you talk to your kids.
It's true. And I think, yeah, we don't have the luxury to put our heads in the sand and not address these topics coming up, because I just read a statistic that said 1 in 6 of Gen Z identifies as some part of the LGBTQ community, whether, whatever their label is. So 1 in 6, that's a high statistic of our kids right now. And so these conversations are happening. They are being exposed to things that for sure some parents, they don't have a belief system of that being okay or according to God's plan. So that's the reality. But I think, again, if you're not talking about these things, educating yourself, taking the time to share why you believe what you believe, then they're really just getting one side of it. And so I think, again, our kids, they're going to make their own choices. That's the reality. But you can offer them kind of your perspective and what you believe, and then let them grow up educated, knowing, in our house, we believe this, and other people believe this. And as you get older, you'll have to make decisions around that.
Hmm.
Yeah. So what about, let's just jump right in with the Bible, because here at Wellspring, we are faith-based, even though we accept clients of all backgrounds, all orientations. But for those of us who are of faith, what does the Bible teach about sexuality?
Yeah, I think, you know, we teach about the genders, male, female.
Mhm.
Um, like we said before, sex is a good thing. It was created by God. Um, and, it also teaches about compassion. It teaches, how we are to treat others.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that's really important, even in the Christian community. Um, you know, at least with me, even certain clients that do identify as gay or lesbian, and they are Christian. And, where do they belong? They don't feel like they belong sometimes in church. Um, and they do, they do. They believe in God. And, I feel like we just have to be aware of that. And we have to be really compassionate and considering about how we talk about these topics, and really dig into the word of God about what God's word says about it.
Okay. Yeah. So maybe I hear you saying, even if we disagree, to still be loving, compassionate, a safe space. That's our, actually, even it's our ethics code as counselors. We have to provide a safe space. And so we want, anyone, we as counselors, we're not here to agree or disagree with our clients, but we're here to help them reach their goals. And we're really big on that as clinical counselors who do love the Lord, but we're clinically excellent. And so I think we can explore the Bible, have our spiritual mentors and know what we believe, but we still have to be educated on topics, even at times when it's things we don't agree with. So I kind of want to give that gentle nudge that we're not in the world, even though we're living in it, though. We're not of the world, but we're in the world. So
Hmm.
that's a rough paraphrase, but I think a lot of our listeners know what I'm saying. So what
Yeah.
about with our children? What about teaching them what they'll encounter in society? Like, how can we kind of expound on that? I think that's important.
Yeah, I think it's important for parents to, go before their kids, before they see something and then they're like, "Whoa, I didn't even know this existed."
Yeah.
You know, to talk about it in their homes. And I think it's important for parents to notice like how maybe uncomfortable that might be for them, how awkward,
Hmm.
um, and even to discover for themselves like what are my beliefs about sexuality? Like, where did I learn about that?
Yeah.
Um, Even like you said, did I talk about this like when I was a kid? Did my parents like how did they approach it?
Yeah.
How am I approaching it with my child? It's already an awkward conversation, and you don't want to stumble through it with your kids. You kind of want to have somewhat of a grasp, because kids will fight. Like they have great questions. Even me in counseling,
Oh yeah.
sometimes they ask me, and I'm like, "Whoa!" Like I have to collect myself. I'm like, I didn't think about that, or
Yeah.
I
I've
get caught
I've
off
had to
guard in these
learn.
conversations.
Yeah, I've had to learn to say, I honestly don't know. I'm gonna have to get back to you. You kind of have to be humble and not have all the answers. Because yeah, some of my teens, they ask me things. I'm like, oh goodness, like
Yeah.
I wasn't ready for that today. And I'm sure that happens to parents all the time.
And that's okay. It's like, okay, I don't know. Actually, I don't know the answer to that question, but let's look into it together. Like, let's dig into God's word together. Let's dig into, research, society, like what is
Yeah.
going on? Like, let's find the answers together.
I love that. So it's a very
Mhm.
humble approach with your kids. So that might be hard for parents who are more authoritarian, like do as I say, not as I do. And, I'm your parent, so just do it. This is a much more, again, a connected parenting approach to connect with your kids, talk about these topics, emotionally attune to them, notice how they're feeling, like Yasmin said. And yeah, and we need to have a grasp ourselves and not be so uncomfortable and maybe turning red. And, we're kind of showing them, oh, this is an embarrassing topic. So we need to have some confidence as we talk about sexuality and genders and, this whole umbrella of many, many, many things going on and coming out in our society. So, yeah, maybe even starting some discussions with your spouse or a friend and just getting a little more used to talking about what is truly going on in our world.
Yeah, that was one idea. Like role play. Like if you do feel uncomfortable, maybe with your spouse, with a friend, like, okay, I'll be the parent, you be the teen. Let's practice this. Let me practice, how this is said. So that when
Yeah,
you do have the conversation, you're ready to have that convo. You feel more
yeah,
comfortable. Hmm.
absolutely. Okay. So again, let's touch on open communication. So you've already encouraged us to role play, to practice speaking these terms out loud, to notice our own discomfort and beliefs about sexuality. But encourage us a little bit. How can we more practically have this open communication and kind of that more comfort level as we're talking to our kids?
Yeah. I think, especially with sexuality, you come from a place that like I'm right and like this is how it is. And that kind of blocks you from really listening well to your child, paying attention to
Mhm.
what they're saying, asking questions. Where did you hear that? Why do you feel that? Why do you think
Yeah.
that? There's a huge non-judgmental component that comes into having this conversation well with your teen. If you're coming in there like this is how it is, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
already decided, they're gonna shut down, they're gonna get defensive, and the conversation is not gonna go well.
Yep.
And
You're
and
right
it's
on.
okay if it gets heated, you could take a break. You can know when to stop, I think we talk about a lot of this with our parents, you have to realize when the conversation is not productive anymore and take that break and then come back when you've collected yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like too how we had talked a little bit before the show, just to be prepared at all times because your kids are going to hit you with those questions when you least expect it. You're chopping onions for dinner and they come in and say, "Hey
Yeah.
mom, I heard this at school today." And you're like, "Oh no." Like, I'm
Yeah.
just making dinner. I wasn't ready to talk about this, but that's how a kid's mind works. It's always exploring, taking in data and kind of analyzing things. So we just need to be prepared even before we think we need to. So probably people are thinking, oh, when they get 13, then we'll address these topics. No, we're hearing from you that maybe around 7, puberty's starting, they're starting to notice things. We know from social media that these topics they're out there for all ages. As soon as they have a phone or a tablet, they're on anything without supervision, they're going to be exposed. So
Yep.
we need to be prepared earlier than we think. And
Mhm.
maybe, yeah, what do you think about supervision with all of this technology and everything?
Yeah, it's tough. I think, parents have to know, you have to know what your child is listening to and watching.
Yeah.
Um, even if, even if you don't agree with it, or even if you find them making poor choices, that's a conversation starter. That's a teachable moment.
Mm.
Um, if you hear something that doesn't sound right, it's like, what? You just heard that, I don't know. I can't even think of a thing right now, but you can use that as like a teachable moment to be like, okay, well, society says this. What did you think about it? What do we know about it? This is what we believe about it. Um,
Okay.
and that opens up communication once again to go
That's
through the whole
awesome.
cycle. Hmm.
Yeah. Well, Yasmin, thank you so much. We're going to start wrapping up. That time flew. I feel like we could have talked about it for a day,
Oh,
but yeah, thank you for all your info and just sharing with us. And hopefully, if parents, youth leaders, any adults who have kids in their lives, if you're listening, pass on this show. It's a great one just to talk about sometimes an uncomfortable topic, but we want it to not be an uncomfortable topic. So let's talk about it. Let's share our knowledge. And if you want to pass on this podcast, you can go to wellspringmiami.org. Again, the title of today's show was How to Know More Than Your Kids About Sexuality. So you can go there, or again, your favorite podcast channel, Wellspring on the Air, and write to us. Let us know that you're listening. Send any comments or questions to ontheair@wellspringmiami.org. It's time to wrap up. This is Lindsey Steffen with Wellspring on the Air, because hearts and minds matter.